Good morning, everyone. Welcome in here to episode 216 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. I am Nick Hill, live here as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee of the United States. And joining me from Rio Bronco HQ on a very special day there as they prepare for their season in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil is Gus Tomazelli. Gus, how are things down in Brazil?
Oh, really hot and really good. Today, I'm going to talk about later in the show. We had the Tiger Day, the third edition of the Tiger Day, something that I kind of got inspired by the orange and white game. You know, we have fans come in, watch some scrimmage, watching some practice. Then we went to the field. We're going to talk about, later in the pod, and let's get going. Another Saturday edition, right? We're busy people, so we have Saturday. Let's get going.
Not really a lot of time during the week, but hey, it's Saturday. We have some massive games coming up over the next 2 days. So let's dive right into it, guys. And we'll start off with the College Football National Championship game, because we reviewed the semifinal games in the last episode. If you'd like to go check that out, that was episode 215. Episode 216 here, let's talk about the actual national title games. Monday night in Hard Rock Stadium, Indiana versus Miami. And one interesting thing before we even get into this particular game is a lot of the discussion online is centered around, should this game be taking place on a Monday night 10 days after the semifinals? And I think there's an increasing discussion that the calendar for this particular playoff is not good. Like, it's too spread out in that it loses momentum. And I think if you're outside of the Indiana or Miami fan bases, you're probably not thinking a lot about this game because you have the NFL playoffs and you just kind of get, you're getting back into the regular work life after the holidays. I feel like college football needs to find a way to get this tournament in like a little bit in a more condensed format.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you, Nick. What I don't understand about this is that we kind of waste time in December that we could have used for, this. I think that those programs, they play week by week. So why not just do conference championship, then the first round, then the quarterfinals, then the semis, and then the national championship has to be in the first week of January. It has to be no later than January 8th, if it has to.
Yeah, and like the way, it frankly should be, in my opinion, is, as you said, that first round is the week after. And the reason why they don't really do it now is for two reasons. One, to protect the Army-Navy game, and two, to protect the Heisman Trophy ceremony. I think at this point, the way I would even do the Heisman Trophy, think about how they do the NFL MVP. They do it like the night before the Super Bowl. Why can't we do the Heisman Trophy like the night before the national championship game in the city? And I get like, the Heisman has to be in New York. It doesn't have to be. Like, you can find a place in Miami to have the Heisman Trophy ceremony this week if you wanted to.
But it has become so silly, this argument. Oh, it has to be this way. If we learn one thing about college football in the last decade, if this sentence, it has to be this way, is no longer valid.
No. Unfortunately, tradition has been kind of removed aside. Like, Army-Navy's always been the week after conference title games. I understand that. Unfortunately, at this point, there's a legit chance that at some point Army and or Navy could make the playoffs. And at this point, I think that game is going to have to be moved toward. Make Army-Navy like week 0 if you want. And let that be a standalone game in the year.
Oh, I think it would be amazing because the other week zeros, and then it would be even more fun. This year, the week 0 is going to be in Brazil. That's awesome. But for in the future, why don't you do Navy and Army game overseas and try to create like a football stadium or make it into like a Navy base or Army base?
Yeah, it should be on U.S. soil. In my opinion, it should be on U.S. soil.
I know I'm doing a long stretch, but if if MLB is able to recreate a full-on professional baseball stadium in cornfields of Iowa,
Or
and
you can find a way to like maybe give it its own time slot on like Black Friday or something. During rivalry week where all the other major rivalry games like Michigan, Ohio State, and Alabama, Auburn share the same day. And it doesn't diminish the importance of those games. Like Army, Navy would still matter a heck of a lot on Thanksgiving weekend. And that's where it probably should go with the rest of the big rivalry games. I mean, it doesn't, and I understand like why Army Navy has been on a separate week, but we can't continue to justify it, destroying the whole sport effectively because we're in a situation where we're having to wait on that game to be played on its specific Saturday. Which is pushing this calendar so far back. So at this point, Army Navy, it's going to have to go somewhere else so we can have the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it all come back to this disassociation of entities regarding college football. There's no unity. There's no commissioner. There's no centralized decisions. It's a matter of trying to fit in one thing and then another, and then you create this, Frankenstein of a system.
Yes. Yeah, it's just at some point, I think it'll consolidate at some point around an organization that's not the NCAA. It's where it's going effectively. And you look at the transfer portal, and we'll get into that after we preview this game, but the portal is just continuing to be an absolute free-for-all insanity show. Let's get into this game, though, obviously. Indiana, number 1, 15-0. They're looking to be the first college football team to ever go 16-0. We haven't seen a 16-0 football team since the 07 Patriots. So that's a very, very hard thing to accomplish. But they're effectively on the road here at number 10 Miami, who is hosting the national championship game. Granted, do we think that the stadium will be mostly Miami fans? Probably not. I mean, those Indiana fans have proven they can travel. I think this will be a neutral site game, to be completely honest with you. I mean,
yeah, I agree with you because, which fan base has long waiting for this moment, because Miami fan base, they have been in this role before, even in this city, how many times Miami has played for a natty in the old Orange Bowl. Yeah. But Indiana Hoosier fans, they're going to spend the last ounce of the last penny they have because it's a historical moment for a program that has been in the deep bottom of college football, being in the national championship, undefeated. You have to make any effort you can.
Yeah. I do think for Miami, though, obviously they've been here, but it's been a long time. It's been a whole generation for the Hurricanes. And for a while, it kind of seemed like Miami was just kind of middling. I think there were a lot of questions of, is Miami still one, was Miami ever traditionally a blue blood? And two, were they still capable of being a blue blood? Because we knew what they were able to do in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s when they just dominated South Florida. But from the mid-2000s on, they no longer had a stranglehold in South Florida. He had other programs coming down to Florida and taking some of the best recruits and kind of leaving them kind of fending off in a position with an off-campus stadium. They were getting constantly mocked, including on this show, for a lack of home attendance. They've been mocked for not winning the ACC, even though they've been in there for 20 years. And even if they win Monday, they still have never won an ACC championship. But it may not matter if you've not won the ACC because they may win the national championship before winning the ACC, which is, pretty insane. I do think, there's probably more pressure on Miami here being at home, but they're also an 8.5-point underdog. So there might be more pressure, frankly, on Indiana because, while they've been the underdog Cinderella story, at this point now, we've seen they are just this monster in the playoffs, destroying Alabama, destroying Oregon. And I think there's pressure on them to complete the season because if they go out there and they win, especially if they dominate this game, there are going to be conversations about where does Indiana rank all time in terms of teams. because the performance they've put on in these playoffs is the most impressive to me since 19 LSU.
Yeah, it's a great argument, because a lot of pundits says that the 2019-2020 LSU Tigers football team is the best of all time because the amount of talent they had, the Joe Burrow, talent, the duo he had, I slipped his
Jamar Chase,
name.
Jefferson.
Jamar Chase, Jefferson, the amount of amazing teams they defeated. Alabama with Tua, Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield,
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Oklahoma with Jalen Hurts, Alabama with Tua,
Clemson with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, so yeah, I think for me, Indiana, it's definitely going to be the conversation.
Yeah, but they have to finish off the game here first. And I do think Miami is the toughest challenge that they've had in this playoffs. And I think the big thing here, when we look at Indiana, they're just so disciplined. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't have a lot of penalties. They don't really turn over the ball. Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner, I mean, he has more touchdowns and incompletions in these playoffs. Like, he is just a machine out there. And all of his receivers, well, none of them are necessarily elite on their own. Like, Elijah Surratt's pretty good. But they all complement each other, and Mendoza is able to get the ball to them in very advantageous positions. And all those running backs they have too, they run very hard. They run violently. The one place where Miami is going to have to win, and where they could win, is on the lines of scrimmage. Like, Miami's lines of scrimmages are elite. Like, their defensive line, with guys like Ruben Bain on the front line over there. Of course, on the offensive line, you have guys like Francis Mawaga. They're both of those guys I just mentioned are projected to be high NFL draft picks. Those Lions will have to win the day here for Miami to have a chance to win this football game, and they certainly could. Like, the lines of scrimmage here for Miami are much better than what Oregon had, and they're definitely much better than what Alabama had. So it'll be the hardest on that front. So I think the biggest question to me in this game is, can Carson Beck come out and play another flawless game, basically? Because Carson Beck, in my opinion, played his best game of the season against Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl in the semifinals. I mean, he was excellent in that game, and including on that final touchdown drive where he scored with 30 seconds left. But the two games that Miami lost back in the regular season, Louisville, they lost to SMU. Carson Beck in both of those games had 3+ turnovers. And we've seen this Indiana team has been very good at getting turnovers. Like, they were able to turn over Ty Simpson a couple of times. They were able to turn over Dante Moore. If Carson Beck has turnovers in this game, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to come out and win. And plus, look at the skill positions around him. They're kind of young. Like, the running back, Mark Fletcher, he's only a sophomore. He's coming back next year. Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels, they're both freshmen. So they're fairly young, and Indiana is a much more experienced team in that front. Now, on paper, you can say that I think Miami probably has the better talent on paper. But as we have seen in these playoffs, like, you could say Bama and Oregon had better talent on paper, and Indiana just was by far the more physical, the more disciplined team. And the synergy is there. If you're Miami, you got to find a way to establish a tone here. Like, I'm curious to see which team comes out early and establishes a tone in this football game. If the U can establish a tone and dictate this game on their terms, they'll have a chance. If Indiana is able to do what they did against Oregon and dictate the terms, it could be a long night for Miami, because at that point, you're going to rely on Carson Beck being perfect. And, that's, I think, going to be kind of a tall task against a team like this that doesn't make that many mistakes. And then if you're Miami's defense, who has been really good at getting turnovers. Now, granted, Trinidad Chambliss played pretty well against them, but Trinidad's just really, really good. Reminds me, I need to talk about Trinidad in the portal section. But, yeah, I guess, kind of what are your thoughts on this game?
I wonder, now that Fernando Mendoza is going to be probably most pressure quarterback, and Carson Beck is going to be the opposite side. I think he's going to be the underdog, as even the projection from the betting websites and the pundits, and because all the pressure in the quarterback side is on Fernando Mendoza to be undefeated. He won the Heisman, so all of this is going to be valid if he wins on Monday. But for Carson Beck, if he wins, it's going to be the comeback story. The way he left Georgia, going to Miami, being doubted, and then win it all at home.
Yeah, that's massive. And of course, if he goes out and wins, what does that say about Kirby Smart?
Yeah.
I mean, because there's a lot of questions about Georgia right now about they've won the SEC the last 2 years, but they got eliminated both times they went to the Sugar Bowl. So is that going to start becoming a trend for the Bulldogs? So guys, to me, if I'm looking at this game in terms of who I think is going to win, I do think Indiana is the better team, and I do think Curt Cignetti is a better coach than Mario Cristobal. But at the end of the day, right, Miami's going to come out hair on fire at home, trying to get a championship. And what I'll say is when you look back at Miami's first championship, 1984, they played Nebraska in the 1985 Orange Bowl. And that was an absolute war. That was like the fumble Ruski game. And Miami was able to stop a 2-point conversion at the end of the game to beat Nebraska 31-30 to win the national championship. It feels like this is almost a similar type game where Indiana is almost like what Nebraska used to be. This team from the Midwest, powerhouse, coming down to Miami. And I think a lot of people are doubting Miami having a chance to win this football game. Kind of like they did in 1984. Who are these Hurricanes? And that's the game that established the U. That's the game that put them on the map. This is the game that could put the U back on the map. There's a lot of similarities there. And I'm curious how many people are watching the 30 for 30 on the U, which I think is the best 30 for 30 created, in my opinion. I love that 30 for 30 on the old school Miami Hurricanes. And, this is Miami's chance to really bring back what the U means. So with all that being said, I am going to take Indiana. I don't know really what the weakness is here. If you can get Mendoza to make a mistake, if you can establish a run with Mark Fletcher and Carson Beck have another Fiesta Bowl type performance, Miami has a chance. But we're going to have to see a level of composure loss for Indiana we just haven't seen. So I'm going to take the Hoosiers.
I'm going to take the Hoosiers too. I think they're the team of destiny, and I don't think Curt Cignetti is going to, because you said it. I think the best coach is Curt, and I think it's going to matter at the end of the day. Give me the Hoosiers.
Yeah. But think about this. What would this win mean, though? Just on the other side, what would this win mean for Mario Cristobal, right? If he is able to get this and lift a national title trophy, I feel like that almost insulates him from pretty much any future criticism ever. Because he's proven that, you can recruit. You could be such a good recruiter combined with, it seems like unlimited NIL resources to win one. And, Mario Cristobal has proven he is maybe the best in the game at talent acquisition right now. And there's just certainly, I think, a talent acquisition versus pure coaching. And Curt Cignetti is already a legend for what he has done here, for sure. But if he's able to finish it off with a natty on top of the Big Ten title game, championship, would be, yeah.
The four-factor, not even trifecta, winning the conference, which is a lot of people are saying are the best conference right now in college football, because if Indiana wins, it's going to be the third title in a row. Winning what?
I would agree with that. Now, granted, I will say this. I will maintain the SEC is deeper. I think there's more good teams in the SEC, but the top 3 or 4 in the Big Ten are better are better than the top 3 or 4 in the SEC. And it's just kind of
Because if Indiana wins the third program in a row winning, not even the best years of the, I think what mirrors that is in the early 2010s when Auburn and Alabama won back to back. So there were two different SEC schools, but or even when LSU and then Alabama win, but 3 in a row. Oh no, we had LSU, Alabama, Georgia, right?
Yes.
Yes. We had LSU, Alabama, Georgia.
And then Georgia back too. So it's been it's certainly, it's kind of weird to see the SEC and not even just not winning it, but not even making it to the title game too, since 2022 as well is pretty wild to think about. So in any case, I do think that obviously for Indiana, but also too, if the AC for Miami, right? Like, because it was a leap of faith to put Miami in these playoffs, with the situation with Notre Dame, and for Miami to go on in this type of run, I think validates the ACC a little bit. Like keeps them somewhat relevant.
And for the ACC, if Miami wins, it will get something that they desperately needed: their self-respect, their kind of respect back from conference. Because the ACC, a lot of people were saying they were the next Pac-12, that they were going to dissolve, and Clemson and Florida State, they are there because of grant of rights, and if Miami wins, they get not only that, but kind of pushing back on Notre Dame. I like that too, but a lot is hanging on the balance on Monday. And as you point out, I think, and I agree with you, I'm going with Indiana.
Yeah, so that game is Monday night, 7:30 ESPN. It'll be a fun one. We'll certainly talk about the aftermath next week. All right, but still in college football, though, the transfer portal, it has technically closed. It has closed in that you can't enter anymore, but you can still sign players from it. So the chaos continues. There are thousands and thousands of players got still in there. I believe there's like over 6,000 players in the portal right now. And what really sucks for these guys is there's not spots for all of them. So some of these guys, the question is, did some of these guys enter without a plan? Were they forced into the portal? It's really kind of like the wild, wild west right now. I think there's a couple of situations that really show the lawlessness and just the weird situation. So one, like on Tennessee's side, you have Arian Carter, the linebacker who declared for the draft. So we think, okay, play to Tennessee, going to go into the draft. However, I guess he didn't get a good draft grade because he decided to, all right, I'm entering the portal, and I am. He's now talking like Texas A&M, I think. Because what has happened is since he entered into the draft, like, okay, I've got to go get a linebacker. We went and got some linebackers in the portal. So now there's not really a spot for Arian Carter left. So Arian Carter is going elsewhere. It's kind of similar to what happened to Carson Beck last year. I think this is one question that needs to be answered. Should a player be able to declare for the draft and then undeclare for the draft and re-enter the portal? Should that be allowed? Because in the past, once you entered the draft, that was it.
Yeah, it's, as you point out, a wild, wild west. It's players. I think even the players are kind of getting, because remember, there are 18 to 21, 22-year-old men. Sometimes they're going to decide on the heat of the moment. And this open market, this wild west of transfer portal and declaring for the draft, let them in time crunches make them antsy about decisions.
Oh, 100%. We actually just got a new commitment. It looks like Tennessee has got a cornerback, Tevis Metcalf from Michigan, committed to Tennessee, and that's, I believe, I wonder if that's the brother, because we had a safety earlier this week from Michigan, TJ Metcalf, commits. So we've got 2 Metcalfs, both in the secondary from Michigan. So yeah, so we basically have bought a new defense, guys. We've bought Penn State's with some Ohio State and some Michigan players. Just straight up bought a new defense, which I think had to be the number one priority this offseason for Josh Heupel. Because hey, if these are going to be the rules, then yeah, let's buy a new defense because our defense this year was just horrible, as evidenced by our firing of Tim Banks, bringing in Jim Knowles. I'll be curious to see how these players come together. Now, the good thing I think that's going to be good for Tennessee is when you look at guys like Chaz Coleman, which is the big fish that we really needed. Got him from Penn State. I think shortly after the show last week, it was last Saturday when we got him, Gus. A lot of these guys have played for Jim Knowles, so they already know the scheme. They've played with each other. And I honestly expect the Tennessee defense to make significant strides next year. Because this year, I believe we were like 105th in total defense. Penn State last year was like 31. So if Tennessee had like a top 30, top 40 defense last year, we would have gone to the playoffs probably, considering the offense that we had. So because I don't think we need to have like a top 10 defense to make the playoffs.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it's something the team has to improve it, and Coach Heupel made changes that address that, and definitely I feel like it's gonna be better in the long run.
Yeah, of course, the big question for Tennessee is quarterback. Are we going to sign a quarterback? Because we have not signed a quarterback in the portal. Sam Levitt was a big one. We were in a bidding war with LSU. Ultimately, Levitt chose to go there and play with Kiffin. I know we were talking to Bo Perbula at one point, who I wasn't really a fan of, and he went on to Virginia. So we still have not really signed anyone. Now, the big fish that's in the portal now is Darian Mensah. He's the quarterback who was at Duke this year, led him to an ACC championship, was at Tulane last year. I really wanted us to get into the fight for this guy, but apparently – the rumor is Miami is offering $10 million to him, which where are they getting that type? Where is Miami getting this money? Like, surely this is illegal money, right? Like, I mean, we know Miami's history with like cocaine dealers and stuff. Like, and I'm not saying I know anything specifically, so don't hold me liable for this. But Miami does not have that many rich donors compared to other schools. I'm questioning where you're getting this money, but Miami's just throwing big contracts around,
Yeah. I think it's a quest. That's what probably in the future a lot of things are going to be discussed about money coming from NIL because I'm not saying any school is doing that, but you might be. 10 organizations might use NIL to launder money as well.
That's what it feels like. I mean, we saw that with the Florida lawsuit a couple of years ago. It felt like that was basically a money laundering operation. So the question is now for Tennessee, if we don't sign a quarterback, we have 2 quarterbacks on roster, George McIntyre, and we have the incoming 5-star freshman, Faison Brandon. So right now, if we don't sign anyone, it seems like George McIntyre will be the starting quarterback next year for Tennessee. Now, we're still waiting on Joey Aguilar's decision. The judge has not made a ruling on that. So if Joey Aguilar is allowed to come back, I mean, it's pretty obvious that he would come back here and be the starter if he is allowed to come back. Now, I've been vocal in that I'm not a massive fan of that because, I really like Joe, and I think he is a good quarterback. I don't think Joey's a great quarterback. And I think he has limitations, and I think our friend Jason says is the best. He's very similar to Baker Mayfield in that he is very prone to turning over the football. And I do want to say that the Kentucky-Tennessee game in Knoxville has just started. It's always one of the biggest basketball games of the year when the Wildcats come down to town. We'll talk about the basketball Tennessee Vols here in just a few minutes. But back on the football side of things, part of me, honestly, is like, I'm okay with the idea of George McIntyre being the quarterback next year for Tennessee. Like, I think the kid has a lot of talent. My biggest concern with him is that he is a stick. Let's go. Good start there. Free. I don't know who shot that, but I think that was Nate Ament. And who's playing a lot better. I'll talk about Nate here in just a few minutes. But I really think, especially with the receiver room that we're going to have, guys. Like, I mean, you have Mike Matthews coming back. You've got obviously Braylon Staley coming back. You got Tristan Keys coming in. I really think this receiver room that we're going to have next year is going to be one of the best in the SEC. Like, weapons all over the field. You just need a guy. You don't need necessarily a hero at quarterback. You just need a guy who could be a field general and to make smart decisions. Hopefully the running game, is a little bit better next year, because it wasn't terrible this year, but it wasn't elite. And I really think it let us down in some of those losses, especially when you look at the Vanderbilt game where we didn't even crack, I think, 50 rushing yards, Oklahoma game where we didn't run the ball well. But could George McIntyre win a game if we don't have a running game? That's the question, because for Joey Aguilar, to me, the answer is no. But with McIntyre, the question remains to be seen. And then the other question is, would Faison Brandon be good enough immediately? Because if you look at last year's number one quarterback in Bryce Underwood, he did play for Michigan this year, and he was pretty good for a true freshman. So, can Faison Brandon be that good off the jump? So the quarterback situation is interesting. There's still quarterbacks out there. I think the one guy we really should be going after in the portal is Taron Dickens, the quarterback from Western Carolina. He had 38 touchdowns last year to only 2 interceptions. Had a game where he literally completed 46 passes in a row, which is insane. And he played, and I watched a bit of tape of Western Carolina, and they play a very up-tempo style. So if there's any quarterback that we should sign out of the portal right now, it should be Taron Dickens. Just for anything else, to give us an extra quarterback in the room. It's really not a good idea to enter the season with only 2 quarterbacks. So if someone gets hurt, you are one injury away from disaster. So, we'll see what Tennessee does. I ultimately think we will sign a quarterback eventually. And I hope out of all the options left, it's Taron Dickens.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions, in this, in this time crunch, in this time span, and hopefully Tennessee will come out stronger than last season.
100%. Honestly, the more some of the moves that we have seen, I think this team is going to be better next year. But the caveat is the schedule is going to be a lot harder too. But obviously, we have a lot of time to talk about what next year looks like in the months to come. Some other quick notes in the portal here. Alabama had a bit of a rough week. They lost several players, especially to like Texas. They haven't really struck on a lot of big prospects. I think the questions around Kalen DeBoer are continuing to percolate down there. DeBoer's going to have to come out and have a very strong season next year before he gets run out of town, because those folks are still fuming about what happened in the Rose Bowl and what happened to Georgia in the SEC championship game. So, Bama is it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to this offseason. Also, Dante Moore announced the other day he's returning to Oregon. He's forgoing the draft. Guess he likely would have gone number 2 to the Jets. So he decided he would rather stay at Oregon to avoid going to the New York Jets. Which, I mean, if I'm being honest, I can't blame him. Yeah, I can't blame him for that at all. Because, I mean,
do you think in the long run, even the National Football League might be concerned about this new reality of college football and players, or even they can benefit from? Because if players stay later in the NFL, do you think they'll go into the league more mature, more ready?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one end, older, more battle-tested, especially with these playoffs that we have now, which are more similar to what the NFL has. The issue, the biggest problem, I think, with the modern college football is the fact that you got these players bouncing around, and they're learning all these different systems, and they're not staying and developing in one system. So I think that could be a problem for the NFL in terms of these guys' development. I think you're going to have a lot of guys that, while, yes, some guys are able to, be better at a new school than at the school they were. I think you have a lot of guys who will not develop, especially quarterbacks. Those quarterbacks have to be maturated, and if quarterbacks are always seeking for a starting role somewhere else, then how are they really supposed to be able to actually develop? And plus, too, I think the big problem is you have a lot of guys where they're going to make more if they stay for their last year of college than if they go on their rookie contract in the NFL. So at the very least, I think if you're more and you look at your projected draft spot and be like, do I really want to go to the New York Jets where quarterback dreams go to die, or do I want to just stick with Oregon, maybe win a national title and roll the dice again next year? So I think that is a very it's very astute. And this is certainly new considerations for the NFL.
Yeah, it's a brand new world in football, and definitely Roger, they always take a closer look and talking to owners to see what potentially implications. And as I said, as you said, it's a double-edged sword. There's benefits and there's issues.
Yeah. And the last thing before we head into that NFL talk, Eric Campbell is suing the NCAA after they ruled he couldn't come back, which if history dictates, he'll probably win that lawsuit and be able to come back to Ole Miss. Now, granted, Ole Miss did sign Deuce Knight, who started some games at the end of the year for Auburn, but who knows? There are no rules. The NCAA has no jurisdiction. It's a free-for-all. It's the wild, wild west, Gus. And I'll be curious to see how long we remain before. I mean, to me, it's almost like a stock market bubble almost. At some point, it's like a situation where people overvalue a certain product, and then people start thinking, oh, wait, this product is overvalued, and the bubble bursts. So I think that's where we're going. It's going to be at some point, college football will have a recession. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens when that recession hits. Anyway, let's move into the NFL. Got the playoffs here. Of course, last week we had the Super Wildcard weekend. I think the storyline of the weekend was Mike Tomlin coaching his last game in Pittsburgh, which I think a lot of us saw coming. Granted, the way that game went, honestly, I mean, yeah, it's kind of the way I saw it going. I either thought it'd be a low-scoring defensive game or the Texans win the blowout, and it turns out we got both. I mean, the Texans' defensive line had, I think, the most dominant game I've ever seen a defensive line in the NFL have. I mean, they just owned the Pittsburgh Steelers' offensive line in that game, especially Daniel Hunter on Troy Fontenot was just a complete and utter mismatch. Just an utter mismatch. Aaron Rodgers had no chance back there, even though C.J. Stroud himself really did not have that good of a game. I mean, he had 3 turnovers, but the Steelers only got 3 points off of those 3 turnovers, and that was pretty much the game right there. Mike Tomlin the day after said he was leaving. He was done after 19 seasons, never having a losing season. Gus, do you think this is, I mean, obviously initiated by Tomlin, but I mean, you could probably infer that Pittsburgh told him, hey, we want to move in a different direction, but we don't want to fire you. So can you just go out and resign? And that's what it feels like.
I think was the best for both. I think Tomlin saw that his style of coaching hit a deep ceiling. That's what Pittsburgh Steelers fans they had an antsy about. It's not that they don't like Mike Tomlin. Of course, he'll always be remembered as one of the greatest coaches in their history because, as you point out, since the 60s, he's the 4th coach in the football team history. But both Tomlin and the front office knew that this relationship was going to stay like that. They were going to be the 9-8 team who was, going to be competing for a playoff spot until the end, and then, not and being eliminated in the last week of regular season or being eliminated in the wild card. So I think it was best for both. It was time.
Yeah, and I would assume too this is probably it for Aaron Rodgers as well. which, I mean, obviously Hall of Fame career, one of the greatest of all time. Maybe a little disappointing he only got one ring, but hey, Dan Marino didn't get any rings. So, and he's great, regardless, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. For Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, and there's nothing else I think for him to really accomplish at this point. It's time for him to go into the sunset. And I wish it went out under better circumstances, but it is what it is. And that at least he was able to go to the playoffs in his last year, win a division championship. It was a fitting end, I think, for Aaron Rodgers.
The only thing would be nice if, I don't know if the NFL could do that, in the NBA and the MLB is more traditional, is that it would be awesome to see if he signs with the Packers and retires a Packer.
Yeah, I think I've seen in the NFL sometimes where they'll sign a one-day contract.
Yeah,
just retire as a Packer. It really should, because he'll always be a Green Bay Packer for sure.
His time with the Jets and all the Steelers, more so the Jets were very forgivable. I mean, for the Steelers, he played as well as he could for a 42-year-old quarterback, and he got them to the playoffs. Something that, for example, last year with Kenny Pickett and not Kenny Pickett, with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, they were not able to, right?
Right. So, I mean, and Aaron Rodgers was still a better option at his age. And for the Steelers, quarterback-wise, what do you really do? Because I think, a lot of discussion about them maybe being able to draft Ty Simpson at 21, but now with Dante Moore out of the draft, the Jets might take Ty Simpson at 2. So you might be just kind of left out to dry quarterback-wise. Maybe you can draft a Trinidad Chambliss, maybe, if he's not allowed to come back to Ole Miss. So a lot of this, I think, and this is where we were talking about just earlier, the impact in the NFL. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are at the mercy of what happens with the transfer portal in the NCAA, because they're going to need to find a way to get a quarterback. And the Vols a bit hot early, up 18-8 on the Wildcats. Come on, keep it up, boys. So. Yeah, so I'll be curious to see who the Steelers get as their head coach, where direction they go. Clearly, the organization needs some new energy, some new blood, because they've just been really mediocre. You almost think they're going to have to blow it up and probably kind of have some bad seasons, really tank. Because when you're 9-8, 10-7 every year, you can't draft top-end talent. So at some point, they're going to have to tank to get where they really want. I can't hear you.
I got now. Because being in this some sort of a limbo, it stagnates. It creates this stagnation of the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise, that you can attract high-profile players, especially quarterbacks, but you're not bad enough to try to draft the high-profile college quarterback.
Yeah. So we'll see what the Steelers do moving forward, but clearly they're entering into a new era. Meanwhile, speaking of Aaron Rodgers' old team, the Packers, man, and how did they do this again? They were up 21-3 at the half at Chicago and just completely collapsed in the second half. That offense couldn't do anything, and that defense got shredded, especially in the fourth quarter by Caleb Williams, who, by the way, one of the best playoff throws I've seen in a while in that 4th and 8, where he was falling backwards and found Colston Loveland down the field for 40 yards. One of the great finishes in NFL playoff history. And those fans of Chicago were going absolutely ballistic. I mean, that to me seemed like it was basically the NFL version of Tennessee being Alabama in 2022 in terms of the reaction for Chicago and just what that win means to Chicago fans. I know one of my friends is a Bear fan. Shout out to Nick Stringer. And he said he was basically crying at the end of that game. So I know that win meant a lot to the Chicago Bears. And the Packers, they're staying the course with Matt LaFleur. And personally, I think that's the right move. There were some people who were calling for his head after this collapse. They had a lot of injuries this year. And losing Micah Parsons was their death blow. that team, the Packers were a legitimate Super Bowl contender with Michael Parsons, and when they lost him to injury, it just ended their season. They ended their chances. And Jordan Love, I thought, played excellent in this game. Had 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. But they just, I mean, too many injuries to win in the playoffs here.
Oh yeah, this game was massive for the Chicago Bears organization. It kind of reconnect the city with the fans because with all those rumors that the Bears were leaving Chicago, even the state of Illinois, they need a game like that. You know, beating the arch rival in a playoff game. You know, after being bad for so many years, and it shows that the front office made the right choice, with this duo, Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. Really Caleb Williams, too, in the second year, proving that he was absolutely the right choice at number 1 overall last year for the Chicago Bears, and proving that he has generational talent, potential for the Chicago Bears, because the Bears have always struggled to put on a good quarterback. The last good quarterback they had was Jay Cutler, and the Caleb Williams, I think, has a chance to be a lot better than Jay Cutler. So big win there for Chicago. Also, I think the most impressive single player performance was Josh Allen last week. The Bills looked like they were dead in the water in this game, but man, Josh Allen just went into superhero mode yesterday. I was talking with a Bills fan yesterday, a UTC professor I interviewed for a story I did yesterday, and he's like, it's nerve-wracking that our team, I feel like our team is not that good, but like Josh Allen can put on the cape and win games. And if the Bills find a way to lift a trophy for the first time, it'll be because of Josh Allen. And I think Josh Allen right now is the best single player in these playoffs. And that might be a bold take from me, but he is the most important player to his team respectively, because the Bills are probably a sub 500 team without Josh Allen. And I don't know how many more games they're going to win if Josh Allen has to do all of that to win a game. And, for the Jaguars, I had them going to the Super Bowl. Some inexperience showed up in that game, especially early on. I think that cost them. I still think, obviously, they're very talented. There's a lot of potential for them moving forward. But, hey, it's just lessons learned, and I probably shouldn't have picked them. But, hey, still an amazing season for Jacksonville. I mean, they're compared to where they were 1 year ago. Like, I'm hoping Tennessee has a similar turnaround in store soon, because that's what I want Tennessee to look like at some point. I can't hear you.
I think the Bills' experience in this kind of game counted in the end. Definitely elevated Josh Allen's profile, but and also, do you think it saved Sean McDermott's job?
For the time being. Now we'll see what happens this afternoon in Denver.
Because no, and I said that because an NFL article, NFL Insider Ian Rappaport says the Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott is likely to return for next season. So do you think they already made that decision, or do you think they're going to wait to see the outcome of this playoff?
Well, it sounds like they've made that decision after. And I think they had lost this game. I think there would have been a chance of them moving forward. Because you got to remember, the Buffalo Bills have a new stadium next year that they're going to move into. So if the Bills were going to make a move like that, this offseason would make sense, right? Like, while you still have Josh Allen in his prime, and if you think you need to upgrade the coach, you do it now. Because clearly their wide receiver situation is not great. They have not been able to replace Stephon Diggs. The defense is good, but it's not great. Really, they're here because of Josh Allen. And Josh Allen will take them as far as they're going to go as far as Josh Allen takes them. At least that's my view on the Bills. Now, the same cannot be said, though, for Justin Herbert, who now we have to start asking some questions about Justin Herbert here. I mean, and granted, I don't think what happened last week in New England was completely his fault. The O-line did not play well for the Los Angeles Chargers, but you can say that Josh Allen had issues too with the O-line, but Josh Allen was able to put on a superhero cape. Herbert, I think he has his reputation of being in that top tier elite status as a quarterback, but we've never seen him do it in the playoffs. We saw his teams blow a massive lead at Jacksonville to a sub 500 Jags team. Last year, they got absolutely destroyed at home by the Houston Texans. Well, actually, that was on the road, but they got destroyed by the Houston Texans, who were not great. This year, the offense doesn't do a thing in New England. I mean, people talk about color. Like Phillip Rivers couldn't win the big one with the Chargers. Herbert can't win a single playoff game with the Chargers. And I think that, the question is Herbert, when you look at that, Coach, you have Burrow at the top of that particular class, and Burrow's made a Super Bowl. And there are other organizational issues in Cincinnati, but Burrow has proven that he can do it. Tua, we've seen, has gotten benched. I think that it's safe to say that as of right now, we're leading to him not being able to do it. Herbert was right behind Tua. And while Herbert, I think, is better than Tua, how much better is he really? Because he hasn't won a playoff game. Kind of what you're...
And now you have. You got me?
Yeah.
No, I was saying that, and now he has an elite coach. No, you cannot, discuss how good Jim Harbaugh is and how he can elevate quarterbacks. Look at his time in San Francisco. How he elevated Alex Smith and even Colin Kaepernick. After more so Kaepernick, that after Harbaugh left, declined on the field and focused more off the field topics. Alex Smith, I think he had a good run in KC. I won't say great, but I think it was good. But I was expecting more. That's why I was, kind of a little bit optimistic, even saying the Chargers were gonna, go all the way. And so, but yeah, they have a lot to grow in this offseason.
Right, and if the Chargers go all of next year and they don't win a playoff game next year, do we start talking about the Chargers needing to replace him? Because it feels like next year is going to be a year where we need to see something from Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. I think it's a really valid question.
Yeah, massive.
Because they're not going to replace the coach. I don't think Harbaugh is there for staying.
Yeah. So, massive year coming up for Justin Herbert. It's going to be a long offseason for him. Eagles, of course, the defending Super Bowl champions, they got eliminated at home. It was a frustrating. I know they won the NFC East. It was a frustrating year for Philadelphia. That offense was just not good this year. It's kind of weird because it's mostly all the same pieces from last year. And last year, the offense was running on peak efficiency. It was just weird. I feel like Justin Hurt or Jalen Hurts was completely off with his receivers all year, and it never looked easy for Philadelphia this year. And it felt like I felt like they felt a lot of pressure to go back to back. And I don't know if we're going to see the Eagles turn into a dynasty like the Chiefs were able to be.
Yeah, I think the Eagles had a turmoil season. Probably did not end the way the fans expected. But I saw something that, it made Eagle fans optimistic for next year, because the last time, they were eliminated in the wild card after having an 11-6 season, in the year after, they won it all.
Yeah.
But Nick Sirianni has a lot of things to figure out in this offseason.
I think one of those is going to be probably getting rid of A.J. Brown. I think that whole situation with him complaining about the targets and just I feel like he kind of became a locker room cancer this year. So I think, I think after the Super Bowl run, I just felt like they weren't as engaged But I think, the way this year went. Oh, what a steal by Nate. Wow. Great play by Immense playing so good. Okay. Anyway, we'll talk about basketball in a second. Yeah, but I think for the Eagles, they'll find a way to come back. I think they'll be really good again next year. And I think the team that's most interesting here, the Carolina Panthers, they put on, I think, a very impressive performance to me against the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, they almost pulled it off. Now, Matthew Stafford was able to pull it out a last-second drive to win it. And Bryce Young looked really good. Like, I think Bryce Young has shown that he is not a bust. I think there were worries that Bryce Young was a bust. He's not a bust. He is starting to put it together. And I think the Carolina Panthers have something moving forward. Now, it'll be curious what the rest of the NFC South does. We saw Tampa this year fall off a lot. Atlanta has talent, but can they ever figure it out as a franchise? New Orleans with Tyler Shuck, I think, has some promise. So it's going to be tough, I think, in the NFC South. But the Panthers, I think, will have a shot to get back here next year.
Well, sorry, Nick, it cut out.
Oh, I was talking about the Carolina Panthers and how impressed I was with their performance, especially Bryce Young. I think is proving that he is the true franchise quarterback here for Carolina.
Oh yeah, their patience paid off. The same argument we made about the Jaguars, we made about more so with the Panthers, that they're going to be better next year, and also their division. I don't see the Falcons, and the Tampa and Saints improving in a point that I think Carolina is here for staying in the NFC South. I think in the next year they're going to continue to be better than all. I think they're going to compete with Tampa again because I think Falcons and the Saints are still in the rebuild mode.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into some previews and predictions here. First game on deck today is the Buffalo Bills going to the Mile High City against the Denver Broncos because they're the 1 seed, had last week off. Bo Nix, I feel like there's so much pressure on Bo Nix here, right? Because, they made the playoffs last year. They didn't play great. There's a rematch of last year because the Bills beat the Broncos last year in the Super Wildcard. Of course, the Bills now going to the Broncos. Josh Allen, not too far from where he played college in Laramie. What do you think is the big deal, and what do you think is the key in this matchup?
Yeah, I think definitely the Mile High definitely is gonna be a factor, but definitely what Sean McDermott has to overcome is win the trenches, because this Broncos team has proven they're clutch, they're strong, especially with the things that their head coach figured out, how they improved this season and how Sean Payton has made this team strong.
Right, and I think too that the X factor in this game, it's going to come down to the running backs here. Can James Cook take some pressure off of Josh Allen, and then vice versa? RJ Harvey for the Broncos had an amazing second half for them. He's going to have a big game today. I think whichever running back has the better game is going to have the better shot of winning this football game. For me, I've been going back and forth on this. Honestly, I'm feeling the Bills. I think the Bills find a way to pull this off. And Josh Allen, I trust.
I'm going with the Broncos.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one. All right, tonight in Seattle by the Space Needle, you got the 49ers going over to the Seahawks, and apparently, Gus, somehow in their week off, Sam Darnold injured his oblique. Yeah, well, he injured his oblique, Gus. So there's a question whether or not he will play. Now, it's likely he will play.
Então, por isso.
Gus?
Porque o seu Tuca Guimarães.
I think he's talking to someone. I don't think he realizes his mic. Gus? I think we're also having some internet connectivity issues there too. So I'll keep on talking
Let's
about.
go spoiler.
Yeah, so we'll keep. Sorry about this, guys. We're having some connectivity issues here. Okay, so I think he's muted himself. Okay, so the question is, for Sam Darnold, when you look at this injury, right? Like, how much is it going to be affecting them? We just saw the Seahawks 49ers game 2 weeks ago down in Santa Clara, and the Seahawks dominated that football game. The defense that Seattle has is no joke. And I think Brock Purdy is going to have to play a seamless football game to win against Seattle. However,
first of all, sorry, Nick. I had a working call, but yeah, I don't know if you guys could hear, but my prediction for the first game is Broncos.
Yeah, Broncos. I'm now about the 49ers Seahawks. Now, I will say this. If Drew Lock has to play in this football game for Seattle, it really changes the complexion of this football game a lot. And ultimately, like, I'm going to have to see Sam Darnold deliver in the playoffs to believe it, even if he plays in this football game. And if he's truly, since he truly injured his oblique somehow in the off week, I don't know. I'm going with San Francisco to pull this off tonight. So I'm betting a repeat of, I think, 2022, where both the Titans and the Packers lost at home as the 1 seeds. I think it's going to happen again.
Me too. I'm gonna go with the 49ers.
All right, tomorrow in Chicago, we have the Rams, Los Angeles Rams, going to Chicago. Temperatures are going to be in the single digits. Apparently, this is going to be the coldest game the Rams have ever played in franchise history. How big of a factor is that going to be in this game for a team from LA having to go to the cold in Chicago?
Oh yeah, I think that factor has to put in place. A West Coast team going all the way to the Midwest with the really, really cold temperature. And Sean McVay normally in this kind of situation doesn't do well. But so with that factor, I'm going to go with the Bears.
I'm going with the Bears too. The one thing that is worrying me is Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson, if the Bears had lost last week, I would have been calling for Ben Johnson to be fired. I thought the way he coached that game in the first two and a half quarters was asinine. It was one of the worst coaching performances I've ever seen. Some of the fourth downs they were going for, some of the play calls in those fourth downs were just horrific. Now, they came back and won, so we're not talking about Ben Johnson as much, but Ben Johnson's got to be smarter here in this game, because he was riverboat gambling his way out of that football game. And another made free for Jacoby Gillespie going off today. But I'm going to go with the Bears too. I think the Bears hold off. So we both have the 49ers and Bears in the NFC Championship game, which would be in Chicago. And of course, that game a few weeks ago was a classic, was amazing. So we'd love to see a rematch of that. So in the last game here, we got the Texans at the Patriots. I mean, the Texans defense is, I think, the best single unit in the entire league. Like, the Texans defense is incredible, but the Patriots defense is nothing to slouch at too. So I think, to me, this will be a very defensive game. And to me, who do you trust more between Drake May and CJ Stroud? Because Drake May has only played one playoff game, and he was okay last week. They had over 300 yards total offense, but they didn't really score a lot. CJ Stroud had 3 turnovers. I don't know which quarterback I trust more here between Stroud and May. I mean, like, intuitively, right, like, Stroud is a bit more experienced than May, but man, I don't know. I just think the best single unit here is the Texans. I'm going to take the Texans on the road.
I think, especially because this Patriots team probably is not, as we point out, their schedule made them the number 1 seed. But I feel like, the Texans are more, again, experiencing this kind of situation, going with the Texans.
All right. So you have Texans at Broncos next week in the AFC Championship. And I have Bills at Texans in the AFC Championship. And I guess right now, my Super Bowl pick, if that all happens, I would be going 49ers and Texans right now. That's what I'm feeling like for the championship, for the Super Bowl. So I don't know what you, so like if you get Texans, Broncos, and then 49ers, Bears, who do you think would be making the Super Bowl out of that?
Mine will be 49ers and Bears.
Well, that would be the NFC Championship. You can't.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I have 49ers and Broncos.
Okay, 49ers and Broncos. One last NFL note here. The Giants have hired John Harbaugh, so was not out of a job for long. The New York Giants have gone with him. I think that obviously is an upgrade for the Giants, a much-needed decision for the Giants. And hopefully they'll be able to stabilize the situation there and really help Jackson Dart grow a lot. I think that's a good hire. The Titans are still searching. I'm not really sure where we're going to go for a coach. I was really hoping for Harbaugh. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully get someone who can really continue to develop Cam Ward. All right. Really quick to kind of wrap up some American here. I want to talk a bit about the basketballs right now because, Gus, they are playing very well right now with 6.5 minutes left in the first half. The Balls are up 36-22 on Kentucky. Granted, this is not your vintage Kentucky team. They're struggling this year. They're 11-6. There is a chance that Kentucky misses the tournament outright. Right now, I think they're like a projected 10 seed. So this is not a good Kentucky team. They might run Mark Pope out of town with how lackluster they've been. But this is a very good performance. Jacoby Gillespie has 14. And I want to say this. I've been rough on Nate Mint over the past few weeks, but he is starting to turn it around, especially the performance they had on Tuesday night against Texas A&M. They were down. They had to rally, win a double overtime. And like Dana Mint is starting to put it together. The big thing for him is being able to drive to the rim, being able to punish them down low. He's 6'10", and I think he's beginning to learn. And you got to remember, he's only 18. He's beginning to learn that they can't stop him when they go to the rim. The opponents can't stop him. Oh, what a dunk! Oh my gosh, that was I think that was Dwayne Brown. He literally jumped from the free throw line, just dunked it right over a Kentucky guy. That was awesome. Right now, 38-20. This is a fun game, Gus. I'm having a good time watching. This is a lot better than last Saturday's game at Florida because it was a good game while we were on the air, but when we went off, it just became a disaster really quickly. But to be fair, Florida also went and blew out Oklahoma the other day. And I think Florida is just starting to get it together. They're starting to look scary like they did last year. Now, granted, I don't think Florida is I don't know if Florida's the best team like last year necessarily. I mean, I would still say like Michigan and or Arizona is the best team right now. But the basketballs, they're starting to look a lot better. They had some rough games there. But I think winning that game Tuesday night against Texas A&M was a massive confidence builder. And obviously, Kentucky is just getting ran out of the gym right now, which has happened to them a couple of times over the years in the Food City Center, TBA. I remember that 2019 game. Guess were you there at that one in 2019 where it was a top 10 matchup and we beat them by like 20? It was a massive game late in the year.
I remember the 2017 one. The 2017 one was massive when Kentucky was the number 4 team and Rick Barnes were starting their, was probably year 1 or year 2 of year 2 of Rick Barnes, and I wasn't there.
Yeah, so obviously, hopefully this keeps up and they can finish it off because this would be a very nice week for the Vols to finish this off well. A really good resume building week. Now, next week they go to Alabama and to Georgia. Both of those teams are top 25. So I think if you could split next week, that would be pretty nice as well. Of course, it's a long way to go in the college basketball season. The last thing I'm going to bring up is NASCAR has announced a new championship format, Gus. The playoffs are dead. We no longer have to talk about playoffs in NASCAR, which is excellent because it was always bad. It never you can't do racing in or playoffs in motorsports. It's not like the football or basketball or baseball. I mean, you're always racing like 30 other guys out there. Like playoffs make no sense. Now they're going back to the 04 format where it's just straight on points. It's 26 races. There's a points reset after the first 26 races, but then it's just points from there on out. And the way they've been able to weight the points based off wins and certain bonus points, I think while I would like to just have a straight up 36 race, like points with no resets and just every race is equal. Clearly there was, they had certain obligations to keep some sort of championship type event towards the end of the year. And I think for the sport, the biggest thing is there's no longer a win in your end system. So like what was happening in the past was, you had guys who sucked all year. They magically won a race and then they were in the playoffs, which just made no sense. Like racing rewards consistency, and consistency is going to be rewarded again in NASCAR. This is a big step in the right direction. And of course, we're a month away from Daytona, and very excited to see how this season plays out. But I think the biggest thing is we will have legitimate champions once again in NASCAR.
Finally, right? Finally, you had some common sense in terms of, NASCAR defining their champion, because playoff and racing just don't work, because racing is the sport that you need to be consistent all year. Yeah, and you cannot reward the last. It's just because it's not like because you can't rule out the teams that are eliminated. It's not like in the NFL that like you don't have all 16 NFL franchises on the field on the same time. You can eliminate it like from 16 to 12 to 8 to 4 to 2, right? In racing, not like that. Like all teams have to be, racing at the same time. So the point system is just makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm very happy NASCAR fan this week, and definitely more excited for this season. And no longer any stupid championship races. We actually have a championship that comes down to the last race. It will be organic and it will have been earned. And that's what makes those moments special. Because I think NASCAR was desperately chasing for the last race to always have a championship battle. And in racing, sometimes that doesn't happen. I mean, sometimes a guy will win the championship 2 or 3 races early. I mean, it's just is what it is. So you can't force it to happen. But when it does happen, it's special. Just look at the 1992 Atlanta championship finale, which was completely organic.
Oh yeah, or even the Formula One end in 2021 between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was amazing, and that came into a 1-lap shootout. But that wasn't like a chase format or anything. That was just the culmination of a season. So hopefully we'll have some moments like that in the future. But it will be good because it will feel like every race will matter again in NASCAR, I think.
Totally.
Yeah, and it feels like there won't be fluky races, fluky winners. And like if a guy like is 30, if it wins a race, all right, cool, he won the race, but he's not all of a sudden a playoff driver. So, we'll just be able to celebrate an underdog winning a race without it really mattering in the championship.
Definitely, 100%.
Yeah, but anyway, Gus, soccer is starting to really ramp back up there in the heat and the summer of Brazil. Man, what in the world's going on in Sao Paulo, though?
Oh yeah, have you ever heard of that? Team's president got impeached. Like normally you hear that on politics, both Brazil and United States had presidents impeached, but it can happen in sports too. Yesterday, Sao Paulo president Júlio Casares was impeached. The councilman, what we call here the the people who are in the council of Sao Paulo decided to impeach him. Now, interim president took over. His name is Harry Macias Jr., 80-year-old doctor, took over. He even went to the fans that they were outside of Sao Paulo Stadium to tell them that he's honored to be the Sao Paulo interim president, and he's going to do everything he could to take Sao Paulo back to the top. But yeah, Sao Paulo not in a good spot. They lost their first game in the Sao Paulo State Championship. Then they won on Thursday. A horrible, horrible, horrible soccer game, especially because the field was compromised due to a lot of heavy rain on Thursday in the Sao Paulo city. And you practically didn't have the ball rolling. You only had the ball bouncing, stuck in the mud. But Sao Paulo won 1-0, and they're going to play a derby, rivalry game against Corinthians on Sunday. And we'll see what's going to be next for Sao Paulo with the new interim president. Corinthians lost on Wednesday, but they were playing with the reserves because of the rivalry game on Sunday. And Santos lost, and they're gonna play. I'm gonna be on. Hopefully, if Paulista Federation approve my credentials, I'm gonna be Sunday covering Guarani and Santos. And Guarani, by the way, do you hear this? Like, they fired their coach, announced the interim head coach, then they announced their coach. The coach was not hired back. He was reinstated. Have you ever heard of that? Like, the coach was fired. Interim
clubs down there cannot make their minds on what they want to do.
Yeah. And their arch rival of Guarani in the city of Campinas, Ponte Preta, in a complete mess, 2 straight losses to start the Sao Paulo State Championship. Players, coaches, even the people that work in the kitchen, the staff, all have problems with their salaries. You know, some folks at Ponte Preta having to go without pay for 7 months.
What? How are they? Like, I mean, how are they even operating as like a team?
That's what Brazilian soccer is. You know, you're able to do that, even though you're not supposed to. And even Ponte Preta is on transfer ban. You know, you probably heard this term. Is that when FIFA does not approve you to make any transfers? You know, you cannot sign any new player. So Ponte Preta is basically playing with their under 20 team that was playing in the Copinha 10 days ago, and with some players that stayed and did not left from last season. So it's a complete mess. Their best player, Elvis, after the loss on Wednesday, kind of went out and said it was a shame, was disgraceful, the situation. That, of course, the performance on the field is on the players, but you know, everything else has to be considered. All the chaos in the front office and all the financial issues. So yeah, so Ponte Preta is not a good term. But last but not least, my beloved Rio Branco. We had Tiger Day today. Great event. Fans show up. You know, watch the scrimmage. You know, was some practice, more so in terms of kind of, you know, some. It's kind of like the new reality for spring games. You don't actually play a game or even do like offense versus defense or reserves versus starters, where it's more like drills, like offensive drills, passing drills. But fans shows up. We inaugurated. We opened up a new space for Rio Branco store. And then after the practice was over, the fans went on the field, took pictures with players, We had a meeting with players, coaches, front office people, and the fans. And the fans talked about their support, how much they support their team, and they especially talked about February 28th game between Rio Branco and União Barbarense. This game is going to be massive for the fans. The fans says all the fans are unanimous. This game is not just for the 3 points. It's a whole championship. It's like Tennessee, Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State.
Yeah, and obviously I know that they didn't play last year, so having that game back will be absolutely critical. But I definitely applaud you for bringing that American concept to Brazil. I think that's a great thing, and hopefully that's something that catches on down there.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm proud that I was able to organize for the third season in a row, and that's what sports all about: fans connecting with players. And American sports does that better than anybody. And I try to replicate things that work. That's what you try to do in life.
Yeah, and that's the thing about international diplomacy, and that kind of like the mythos of our show, right? Like there's stuff America can import in the world, and there's stuff that like Brazil imports in the world as well. So it's the beauty of things.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's what my experience in America I try to do. It's take what I learned here. And Tiger Day, third year, third consecutive season, 2024, 2025, and now 2026. So I'm proud, and hopefully next Saturday, Rio Branco debut on the road versus Rio Preto. Hopefully Rio Branco can start the season with a W.
Yeah, and once again, when is the derby against Barbarense?
So save on your calendar, February 28th, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Brazil time in Décio Vita Stadium in Americana. So everybody is waiting on this game.
That's going to be a massive, massive one. Before we wrap up here, just one last score update. A minute before halftime, it's Tennessee 41, Kentucky 31. So should be a very interesting second half there in Knoxville. But that is all the time that we have today on this Saturday. For Gus Habazelli at Rio Branco HQ in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nico, live as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. You've been watching episode 216 of the only American and Brazilian sports podcast. 2 countries, 2 Americas, all sports. Have a great weekend.